Hello and welcome to this short course that provides some PgMP studying tips, goes over the application process, and provides tips on filling out the experience summaries which are required to be submitted with the PgMP application. We'll cover the following in this course. First, we'll briefly review what the PgMP certification is and its relevance for program managers. Next, we'll provide an overview of the overall application process. We'll then discuss the experience summaries and tips to create those summaries. These summaries are a very critical component of the PgMP application process, and unless those summaries are accepted by PMI, you will not be allowed to take the PgMP certification examination. We will then go over 10 studying tips that can help you to pass the PgMP examination. And finally, we will also cover how to study the Standard of Program Management, which is the book that PMI advises everyone to know very well before taking this examination. And finally, we'll look at the sample questions and the format of those questions. So let's get started. First, a quick note on the instructor. CorpExcellence.com provides management consulting, especially in the area of advanced program management and helping candidates with PgMP certification and other career development needs. Specifically, we provide the following. We provide various learning materials related to PgMP. We provide help in filling out the PgMP experience summaries. We also provide help with the overall PgMP application process. We also provide customers with lots of help in advancing their careers and lots of learning resources. If you have any questions, please email us at corpadmin@corpexcellence.com. Let's now take a moment to review some facts about the PgMP certification. PgMP, or the Program Management Professional certification, is offered by the PMI, or the Program Management Institute, and is considered to be one of the advanced certifications in the area of project and program management. This certification is considered as a next level from the PMP, or the Project Management Professional certification. Due to the stringent requirements of who can take the examination and the tough examination, there are in fact no more than 4,000 certified PgMP program management professionals worldwide. This compares with more than 1 million of PMP certified professionals. The PgMP is also unique in many ways. First, the application process is different than the PMP. Not everyone, for example, can take the P examination. The application is first evaluated and then based on certain criteria, and only if that's approved, one can take the examination. Second, the examination and its preparation is different. For example, one can't prepare for the PgMP certification examination simply by studying a book or two. In fact, one needs to demonstrate their experience in program management along with an understanding of a number of program management principles. We'll be discussing some of these points later in this course. Next, let's discuss if you should take this certification and examination. In fact, you should consider getting this certification if any of the following is true. First, you already have your PMP certification and you expect to stay in the project and program management profession. Getting the PgMP certification can help you learn and understand a number of best practices in the area of program management that you can then apply to your daily work as an experienced program manager. You also want to learn more about managing large and complex programs. The PgMP certification brings into perspective the overall organizational elements that have a direct and indirect influence in the delivery of an organization's complex and large projects and programs. Having this knowledge can help you tremendously in your career, especially with managing large and complex programs and organizations. You also want to advance your knowledge in the area of program management. The PgMP certification can help you master program management's best practices that PMI has compiled with the help of worldwide experts in an overall program management framework. So in summary, this is a very valuable certification to have, especially if you are in the area of program management. PgMP certified professionals are viewed quite differently than the PMP professionals, and it can be a big boost for your career. Next, let's discuss the key points related to the PgMP application process. The overall application process proceeds as follows. First, once you're ready to submit the application and feel you meet all the requirements, one submits the application to the PMI. So this is a straightforward process. The application is then reviewed by PMI and goes through what's called a panel review. The panel review process goes over 3 items. They first ensure that your application is complete and has included all requested information. Next, they ensure that you have the requisite experience in terms of number of years and hours managing large programs. In this context, it's important that you understand the definition of the program, as it's different than projects. Your application must demonstrate that you have been working as a program manager for a minimum number of years. As PMI's requirements related to this can change, and it also varies depending on your educational background, you're encouraged to refer to the years and hours requirements in the PMI certification guide. You can find a link to that in this course. A candidate is normally expected to have that much of program management experience before they can appear for the PgMP certification examination. Also, you're expected to disclose in detail about your work experience that should demonstrate your program management experience. The third component of the panel review process is about the review of 5 experience summaries related to each of the program management domains. You must demonstrate that your program management experience covered all of those 5 domains. In fact, how effectively you write about that experience determines the approval of your application. We will discuss that later in this course. So once the PMI panel reviews and approves these 3 items, the candidate is allowed to take the multiple choice examination, which is the second of 2 evaluations. A successful clearing of the exam certifies the candidate as a program management professional. You should note that PMI selects some of the applications for a potential audit, especially if your experience is not described well. Although there is no guarantee for any kind, you should ensure that your application and the 5 experience summaries that you submit as part of the application are prepared well to not raise any red flags. Let's now review a couple of important tips, especially related to the application process in general. The first one is that when you are filling out the application, is to ensure that you study the PgMP certification handbook. This book is about 41 pages long and covers a number of useful topics, including numerous tips that range from filling your initial application to taking the examination. Unfortunately, it's common for a number of candidates see their applications returned simply because they didn't take the time to properly fill out the application and explain their work experience as required by the PMI's PgMP panels. Therefore, take the time to review the handbook in detail before you even start your journey for the PgMP certification. The link to this handbook is in the resources section of this lecture. The second tip has to do with recording your program management experience by actually documenting it. Many candidates that we have worked with already have a majority of that documented in their CVs and resumes. You can start with those as a starting point, but get into more details about the activities that you performed, especially as they relate to program management. Although many candidates don't realize it, identifying your right project and program experience in the PgMP application process is one of the foundational elements of applying for a PgMP certification. This is for 4 reasons. First, you can't expect to pass the exam by memorizing a few concepts alone. You not only need to have the fundamentals understood, but also need to relate it to your experience. Second, the PMI wants to ensure that you have the right experience before you're even allowed to appear for the PgMP certification examination. In PMI's view, this means that you have had the experience to manage complex projects and programs with minimal supervision. The projects and programs should have been complex enough to have spanned multiple organizational functions. You should have managed various aspects of the project, such as cost, schedule, risks, dependencies, etc., and that you are adept at managing resources. Also, the expectation is that as a program manager, you have deep knowledge in various disciplines such as finance, communications, influencing people, conflict resolution, and others. You therefore want to select and mention experiences that can demonstrate your qualification to take the exam. The third reason for properly defining your experience is that your experience summaries in the application will need to refer to this experience. You should therefore be able to delve deeper into this experience and related to the various program management domains. Not being able to identify and select the right experience from your background will thus influence your documentation of your experience summaries section of the PgMP certification application. The fourth reason for ensuring that you identify the right experience for your application is that it will help you in the preparation for your multiple choice examination, especially the case study types of questions. As you try to comprehend the various concepts, you'll need to connect them with your real-life experience. Selecting the right experience will therefore greatly aid your preparation. Again, as we discussed earlier, you can't simply rely on memorization to pass this examination. In short, investing the time to properly recall and defining relevant experience and articulating it effectively in the PgMP application can go a long way in your PgMP certification journey. In this lecture, we'll discuss the application summaries, and then in the next, we'll provide some tips on how to prepare your application summaries. As part of the PgMP application, you're required to submit experience summaries in which you have to demonstrate your program management experience related to the programs that you have managed. You will therefore have to specify the programs that you have managed and relate your experience to various program management principles. Remember, the PMI organization isn't interested to confer the PgMP certification based on anyone's theoretical knowledge alone. Rather, they want to know that you actually have had experience managing programs and have applied good program management practices. So, what are the PgMP experience summaries? Let's review the key points. PgMP experience summaries provide PMI a detailed description of your professional program management experience. There are a total of 5 experience summaries that you're required to submit pertaining to the 5 program management domains. We will briefly introduce each one of them. So, program strategy alignment ensures that the processes and activities pursued by the program manager and the artifacts and documents that are created during the program help align the program to the organization's strategy. Program stakeholder engagement or management. This performance domain has to do with how to engage stakeholders in a program. Stakeholders in the program management context are people, organizations, and other entities that have some type of an interest in the program or whose support is needed to make the program a success. Each stakeholder has varying interests in the success of the program. Some may get direct benefits, while others may not get benefits, but if their current operations could get impacted, they do take interest in the program. Then there are those stakeholders who are only slightly impacted by the changes that the program brings to the organization, but they may still maintain an interest for other reasons. Program benefits management. Program benefits management is one of the key domains within PMI's program management framework, and a program manager is expected to excel in this domain to be certified as a PgMP professional. Organizations embark on major programs with the intent to reap major benefits. These benefits include launching a new product or a service to their customers, improving the organization's capabilities such as modernizing a manufacturing facility, improving internal efficiencies to save costs, modernizing linkages with suppliers and partners to improve one's value chain, and so on. Program governance is the fourth domain in the PgMP certification process. Governance in general is the overall framework within an organization in which decisions are made to meet the organization's goals and objectives. We can also think of this framework as the one that provides policies, rules, and procedures for the carrying out of all key processes of the organization, which could be a large company, a government agency, department, or a program. As for the term program or project governance, as is obvious, it covers governance topics related to the management of projects and programs. So everything about governance that includes delivering performance, decision-making, assigning roles and responsibilities, monitoring a program, managing a program, supporting a program, etc., they would all fall under the program and project governance. Again, to be able to do all this, a program requires the right structure and framework that can facilitate these activities and functions. Program lifecycle management is about the key phases of a program's lifecycle. These include, within the PMI's standard of program management handbook, These include program definition, program delivery, and program closure. So each program goes through these three phases to deliver a program's benefits. An important point to remember here is that although this is one of the 5 performance domains of the program management framework, other performance domains, as well as the support processes and activities that are defined in the program management handbook, they all interact with these program lifecycle phases. This means that going through the program's lifecycle, various activities and processes related to other performance domains are executed. This performance domain therefore spans for the entire duration of the program. Going back to the description about the 5 experience summaries, each summary can have up to 500 words each. The PMI team reviews the summaries and evaluates if your experience meets the criteria, and only if approved, you are allowed to take the PgMP certification examination. So we can see that as part of your application process, you should expect to spend considerable amount of time in preparation of these summaries effectively so your application can get accepted and that you're allowed to take the examination. In this slide, we'll review some tips on how to create the experience summaries relevant to your program experience. So as we covered earlier, PMI will give you 5 questions to answer for your program summaries. So the first thing that you should do is to identify all the key concepts related to program management in the question that PMI has asked you to answer. Next, you should ask yourself if you understand those concepts. If not, you should refer to the Standard of Program Management Handbook from PMI and read up those concepts. Next, you should dig into your own program management experience and then try to answer that question in the summaries that you create for each of those questions. So you should use the knowledge from the Standard for Program Management Handbook and relate it to your program management experience to create these 5 summaries. For example, here we see one of the questions that has been asked in the PgMP application. This question falls under the program strategy alignment domain. If we analyze this question, we can easily see some of the concepts that we need to know related to program management. So the question is, monitor the business environment program goals and benefits realization plan in order to ensure the program remains aligned with the organization's strategic objectives. So what you'll have to do is identify the key terms here, which are business environment, program goals, benefits realization plan, the alignment, how your program alignment works with the organization, and the organization's strategic objectives. So you must understand all these program management concepts and see how PMI has defined those in the handbook, and then try to answer those and relate them to your experience before you actually develop these summaries. So here are 3 tips to keep in mind when preparing the summaries. The first is that if you can afford the time, you should review the Standard of Program Management Handbook before filling out the application. Get an understanding of the various domains and concepts, and then try to relate those to your experiences. You can then use that background to fill out the application and the experience summaries. For example, if we focus on the business environment here you should think about questions such as, how did you monitor your business environment? What aspects of the business environment did you monitor? And why was it relevant to your program goals? And so on. Another important tip to note here is that first you should be very specific about your experience when answering those questions, and also that you should use examples to illustrate your point. Remember, what you're doing here is telling the PMI not whether you know the concepts, but also how you've actually implemented it as part of your experience. In this context, let's consider an example about monitoring program quality. If you said that I, along with my program team, created a process to monitor the program quality, that's quite generic, and it doesn't tell PMI much about how you actually did it. But if you rephrased it and said that I, along with my program team, worked closely with the Planning Council to define the process for measuring defects in the ABC website, that's a bit more specific than this statement. So again, you have to relate this to your experience and then try to create these summaries. So knowing the concepts from the handbook, especially how the handbook defines them, relating it to your experience, both of these are important in creating the program summaries. In this lecture, we'll discuss tips related to how to study the Standard for Program Management Handbook. As we discussed earlier, there is a lot of information packed into a few pages of the standard, and lack of enough tables and figures can make it difficult to fully comprehend all the concepts and materials. It's important, therefore, for each candidate to have some type of a strategy to fully learn and comprehend this material. So let's cover some of the tips that can help you master that handbook as you prepare for the certification examination. The first tip is to organize all materials by key domains and its activities. Most of the concepts related to PgMP and Program Management Standard are based around the idea of domains, activities, and sub-activities. For example, here we see the 5 domains listed, and we see that each of those domains has a number of activities. And some of those activities have their own sub-activities. Also, there are 10 other major program activities as well, and they have their own sub-activities. So we can see that quite easily this can become quite complex. Here is an example of the activities related to the Stakeholder Management Program domain. Those 5 activities are stakeholder identification, stakeholder analysis, stakeholder engagement planning, stakeholder engagement, and then stakeholder communications. So it's quite essential that you start by organizing all your thoughts around those constructs. Although this may seem to be quite simplistic, but if we count all the domains, as we mentioned earlier, and all the activities and sub-activities, this is more than 50 or more. So one can easily get them confused and get them mixed up. So to summarize, this should be a starting point. Again, just relying on the standard of program management to try to comprehend all those domains and their activities can be challenging. It's advisable, therefore, that you should take some time to organize your notes so that you can refer to them periodically to reinforce your understanding. Else, understanding all the concepts can take quite a long time and it can become challenging. The second tip is that you should understand the sequence and inputs and outputs of all the activities and sub-activities. So this picture shows the key output of cumulative program benefits as a result of these inputs. What makes this challenging is that the standard handbook does not specifically show you how those flow, the sequences and the inputs and outputs. For example, let's review this picture about how and when a program's benefits are identified. Now, this picture clearly shows that the key starting point activities should be the program mandate and a program's business case. Although this is documented in textual form in the standard handbook, but it's not illustrated as it is in this case. So again, considering that there are a number of these that you should know, you should read the book and create these diagrams to help you understand the sequence of all the activities and how the various outputs are created. These diagrams then should become part of your notes. Here is another example. We see in this case of program quality control all the sub-activities of this activity. We also not only see the primary sub-activities of this main program activity, but also where in the program lifecycle these activities occur. So as we see in this picture, program quality planning appears in the program definition phase, and program quality assurance and program quality control is in the program delivery lifecycle phase. So again, if you take all the activities and sub-activities which are listed in the handbook and trying to relate of where they appear specifically in the lifecycle can make it challenging to understand unless you document it in some kind of a format like this, so it becomes easier for you to recall them later on. Here is another example where we see the activity of program quality management and the various kinds of outputs or documents and artifacts which are created in this activity. So you can easily say program quality policy, program quality standards, and so on. You have 10 to 15 outputs just for this sub-activity. So, and again, these are not listed in this format in the standard of program management. You'll have to actually read it and extract this information so that you can easily then try to memorize it and understand it. The third tip that you should be very clear on is about knowing the contents of each of the deliverables, especially the key ones. For example, if we look at this picture, we see that the program management documents include stakeholder engagement plan, an issue log, stakeholders lists, stakeholder map, and a stakeholder register. Again, you have to read the standards book carefully to collect this information for each of the key deliverables, as they're not listed in this straightforward manner. Rather, you have to read it extensively to collect all of these and put them in one place to give you a true appreciation of what constitutes a program management deliverable, which is considered as a key deliverable in the overall life cycle. Here is another example of the various sections that makes up a business case deliverable. These include problems or opportunities, imperative for change, and all these different areas which are discussed in the program business case. So again, you may have a question in the examination where they may first ask you that which document is used initially to list the benefits of the program. So you should be able to answer that program benefits are initially listed in the program's business case. They're further elaborated in other documents later on, but they're initially listed in the program's business case. This is another example about the program charter where we see all these items which appear in the program charter, and this diagram also shows you where specifically in the program lifecycle is the program charter created. The fourth tip that you should remember as you prepare for the examination is to understand how program activities and different deliverables and artifacts enable a specific domain. So as you're learning the various activities and understanding the various artifacts and deliverables that are created throughout the program, ensure you understand that how each of those activities and those deliverables support each program domain. So in this example, we see how these different activities support in the organization strategy in the program strategy alignment program domain. So we can see that the developing of the business case, developing of the program charter, the roadmap, and so on, they all help the program in aligning to the organization strategy. And this is covered part of the program strategy alignment domain. So by now we have covered these 4 tips. As for the 5th tip, we earlier had discussed that how knowing all the tables and figures are quite important. Also, as you learn, make sure to organize your notes so you can recall them properly. In this lecture, we'll review 10 tips to help you study for the PgMP certification examination. We have collected these tips by speaking to the many candidates who have appeared on these examinations. So let's review them now. Study the standard of program management thoroughly. First, although this may sound like a simplistic tip, but a number of experienced program managers try to take the examination by simply relying on their experience. That strategy will not work in the case of the PgMP certification examination. Remember, the PgMP tests you on various program management principles which are documented in the Standard of Program Management handbook. That also means you must familiarize yourself with the specific terminology, concepts, and the program management principles as they are defined by that standard. Also ensure that you study from the correct edition because the PMI is constantly evolving the framework and the underlying principles throughout the various editions. The PMI.org website can provide you with the latest edition of the handbook. The second tip is that you should carefully study the tables and figures that are included in the Standard of Program Management. The tables and figures included in PMI Standard for Program Management handbook have been produced thoughtfully, and they summarize a number of key program management principles. Many have stated that a number of questions on the examination are known to cover the concepts underlying those tables and figures. So ensure that you take the time to master those concepts. These tables and figures also serve to provide a quick review of the many key concepts that are covered in the guide. Although there are not that many tables and figures, but whatever is included, ensure that you master those. You should also brush up your knowledge on PMBOK principles and concepts. Ensure that you study and understand the PMBOK principles which are covered in the PMI's PMBOK guide, which is also used as the basis for the PMP examination. As most who usually take the PgMP examination already have earned the PMP certification, so this shouldn't be too difficult, and this would mostly entail brushing up on that knowledge. Additionally, not knowing the PMBOK concepts can make it difficult for you to learn a number of the program management concepts. To be on the safe side, we also advise students to thoroughly study the PMBOK guide at least once, as that not only can provide you with an excellent foundation, but also can make the learning of the program management concepts much simpler. Also, the PgMP examination is known to bring a number of questions involving calculations. This includes earned value calculations and others. They're covered in the PMBOK guide and not in the Standard of Program Management handbook. Here you can see some of those examples of those calculations. So for example, some of those calculations include variance at completion, CPI, which is the Cost Performance Index, SPI, Scheduled Performance Index, EAC related to earned value, ROI, which is return on investments, internal rate of returns, and so on. So some of these calculations are already in the PMBOK guide, and you should at least brush up on those so that if there are any calculations in the program management in the PgMP exam, you should be able to answer those questions. The fourth tip is about read the project and program management related articles on the PMI website. The PMI emphasizes that candidates shouldn't merely rely on any specific sources such as the Standard for Program Management Guide alone to prepare for the PgMP certification examination. While the PMI guide is essential to get everyone on the same page regarding PMI's program management framework, principles, and terminologies, a candidate should further build up his or her program management knowledge from other sources as well. For example, the many articles posted on the PMI website itself provide an excellent coverage of a number of various program management principles. One of the advantages of those articles is that they are mostly authored by those who are PMP and PgMP certified, making those articles even more relevant and appropriate for your PgMP learning needs. So for example, here you can see there are various kinds of publications available, topics, and then content types. And under content types, you'll see articles, case studies, and other content. Going back to our tips, the fifth tip says that you should ensure to know the differences between various documents, artifacts, activities, and phases. The Standard for Program Management Guide covers a number of program management domains, activities, documents, artifacts, phases, etc., that make up the PMI's program management framework. You must learn all of them clearly and their role in progressing a program towards delivering tangible business outcomes. As there are many, they can easily become confusing and difficult to remember. After the initial read, some of the concepts may even seem similar, making it difficult to differentiate one from the other. So one of the techniques that you can use is to list all of the key concepts individually during your initial reading, along with mentioning their specific purpose. Once you have this kind of a system and documented notes ready, it can make it a lot easier to review the content quickly and to eventually master it with time. The next tip is to relate the concepts to real-life examples and case studies. As we had mentioned in the previous slide about documenting your own experience, the key to remember is that rather than testing your theoretical knowledge of the program management principles, the PgMP certification examination tests your understanding of those concepts as applied in real life. A number of questions on the exam are real-life case studies, which you will need to understand and answer in the short time that you have. Therefore, when studying for the program management concepts from the Standard for Program Management Handbook, try to correlate those principles with real-life examples and use cases that you went through. That will not only make those concepts easier to understand, but will also reinforce the value of those concepts and will also make it easy for you to answer those case study questions that appear in the exam. The next tip is to document the notes related to the standard book methodically. So this is related to the earlier point, and basically what it's saying is that how you study for the examination in general, especially in learning the Standard for Program Management Handbook, is quite important. Some of the feedback that we have received from candidates is that there's a lot more text relative to the figures and tables which are included in the book. That makes it longer for people to understand all the points. So this tip is about ensuring that you take notes methodically to help you recall the important concepts later on. In the next lecture of this presentation, we'll go into more details about this topic and how to organize your notes to help you memorize and recall important concepts easily. So we highly recommend that you attend that lecture and understand how to actually take notes from the Standard of Program Management Handbook. Another tip says that you should join your local PMI chapter and attend PMP and PgMP related meetings. One of the best ways to learn about the PgMP examination and related concepts is from people who have been through the experience. That is, from those who have actually prepared for the exam, taken it, and passed it themselves. You can meet such individuals by joining your local PMI chapter and related meetup groups. Also, if your workplace encourages you to take these certification examinations, then look to meet people in groups at your workplace who either have such certifications or are looking to get certified. By partnering and collaborating with them, you can share and learn a lot more than merely sifting through guides and books yourself. Collaborate on lessons learned with other program managers. You should also look to form groups of project managers and program managers at your workplace where you can collaborate on lessons learned with other program managers at work. Such collaboration and learning sessions can be useful for all program managers and can also increase the project and program management maturity of the organization. This collaboration will also help you get exposed to more case studies, which can be quite helpful for you to prepare for your examination, especially the case study types of questions. Finally, attend project and program management related conferences and events. So time and cost permitting, you should attend project and program management related conferences and events. These events are attended by project and program managers from all industries, and learning from their experiences can be very fruitful. As we had covered earlier, PMI also lists some of those conference papers on their website. Attending various conferences on program management thus can increase your overall knowledge of the program management domain.